Notes on Seeing and a Guide to Remembering by Tracey Dela Cruz. My first memory is sound. My mother's voice winds into whispers as she reads to me the Pied Piper of Hamelin while we are curled up in bed. We haven't reached the page about the Pied Piper luring the children away from their parents and into some mysterious place, so I nudged gently at her arm to wake her. I don't remember the words, but I remember the startled, strangled noise she made as she snapped back to attention. It could have been a dream. What I mean is, my memories of then are taken on a more ethereal quality. In her moments of lucidity, my mother tells me stories of what I was like as a girl, shortly after the surgery that allowed me to see. Last week, she talked of how I had caused trouble in a museum, running around to touch all the statues and paintings I could. My mother said she just had to take pictures of the security dragging me out of the building. I don't remember it. Digging through old photo albums the other day, I could find no evidence to confirm her story. The more I think about Ben, the more the memories seem to slip. But there are moments, catching myself in the almost metronomic rhythm that comprises the bulk of every day. The car revving through highways, dicing onions to prepare a meal, the tap 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 of the keys as I transcribe interview for work. A memory surfaces, pierces the sheet of tedious repetition, and, as if shooting from a trance, I remember. She held my head in place by her fingertips. 10 cold, trembling spots on my face as the bandages were unwrapped. She wanted to be the first thing I saw, as if it were necessary I imprint. The way she held me, like I were breakable, that maybe, if she pressed a tad bit more, I somehow might crack. I suppose this is how it always goes when it comes to things of marvel. When one is held together by nothing except expectation, a breath might prove the moment too fragile. How to describe what it was like to see a face for the first time, to see a face and not have a name for what I was seeing, or a name for the face itself. The oval head framed by shoulder-length black hair, lines on the corners of her eyes and mouth, deep brown irises, upturned nose, freckles on her cheeks, smudges of pink lipstick on her teeth. At that time, I could not draw the line between the name and thing. Sight, mother. There are wrinkles on my mother's face that have become permanently etched from worry. Her shoulders are hunched constantly, betraying her tightly wound insides that occasionally, in my youth, unstrung itself to lash like whips. One afternoon, when I was 8, after an argument about something or other, I decided to go to the store to buy chips without telling her. I had, in my frustration, miscounted perhaps a step or a turn to my house as I was walking back. I doubled back but missed again, and again, until no scents or voices were familiar. I sat on the sidewalk trying to squelch the rising bow at the back of my throat. From the changing impressions the light left, I could tell the afternoon moving to dusk. She found me a couple of hours later. She drew her nervous arms around me, apologized profusely as warm tears trailed down my neck. It was only the time she ever cried in my presence. It's been 3 weeks, but Michael and I still haven't finished unpacking our boxes. Save for some of my late stepfather's things, my childhood home hasn't changed. Old rose-colored walls decorated with my mother's embroidered flowers and watercolor paintings of boats. White, double-pane windows with brown vinyl exterior shutters. Leather couches, a granite countertop that marks the boundary between kitchen and dining room. The oak table where my mother used to help me with my homework. We are stowing the future inside the past. I remember telling Michael shortly after we moved in between negotiations of what to keep, what to give away, and what to store. The guest bedroom was the first to go, converted to a dark room for Michael to process his films. We replaced most of the frame paintings with his photographs. My old room is slowly turning into my study, with most of the carpentry being undertaken by Michael's brother. It was painful to have to pack my mother's wood ornaments to store in the cupboard under the stairs, but we needed to make space for the tokens we've collected from our many travels. Going through the mementos of my childhood and reliving old memories make the task long and difficult, painful at times. An uncovered photograph, a music box, my old braille writer. I pause, recall, and tell Michael the stories. I didn't see her face in the hospital, at least not right away. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that my first memory of sight was light. After living in darkness for 12 years, everything appeared too bright. It was like noise, the world overexposed, in blur, then slowly coming into focus, not in a matter of seconds or minutes, but days. Remember, days. Not the hospital, but my room. Under the bed, the lights turned off, the windows sealed shut, the curtains drawn, and still there was too much light. I shut my eyes and pressed my hands into my face. Marie, my mother's face. She is on her knees and palms, her forehead crumpled, her huge eyes staring at me, embarrassed, worried, her lips open. Can you see me? The voice is familiar. The mouth twitches in odd ways. Can you see me, sweetheart? The mouth a straight line, then a kiss, then a gaping hole. Are you okay? Can you see me? My mother's voice becomes when her mouth moves. I close my eyes. Lightness. Marie. Caught in the moment, one might not realize the gravity of an event and how it will define your life forever. It's only retrospect that illuminates certain importances later on. But I remember the exact moment I knew I would be a travel writer. It bore into me with the force of destiny. The summer of 1986, riding a bus with my mother on the way to the pier of Caticlan, where we would take a boat to Boracay. The bend of the mountainside gave way to the vista of a beach. The water rising above the tree line, then waves crashing against rocks, then the sandbar coming into view. It was breathtaking. I took a picture of the cliff face using my mother's camera to carry wherever I go. I've been to more than 60 countries, lived in 3, and still my mind always returns to that first view of the ocean. It's been happening more frequently that my mother doesn't recognize me. Yesterday, she thought I was her sister, who died 6 years ago of cardiac arrest. We were preparing for a double date in 1960. "You are so beautiful," she told me, applying the last few touches to my cheeks. "You're going to have so much fun with Jonathan." "Not too much fun though," she added with a wink. It's often heartbreaking to watch my mother's mind deteriorate when she mixes up dates and people, forgets the passage of time, but it had been pleasant. She giggled like a teenager and fussed about my hair, complained about her parents who just don't understand our generation. Her face lit with all the hope of youth, all the possibilities before her. That was who she was, before me and the 2 husbands she outlived, before she crunched numbers, and before the 100,000 or so hours of perfecting her recipes, of adjusting each item in the house for easier navigation, before the constant care over her blind daughter creased her skin and hunched her shoulders, transformed her forever, before I learned to see. The utensils placed 3 fingers away from the plate's rim, the toothbrush with toothpaste 4 fingers on the right side of the sink, The shoe rack and a small stool 2 strides away from the front door. Nothing blocks the stairs. Nothing ever left on the steps. Laminate study desk opposite the bed that is pressed against one wall. Top shelf, books. The shelf below that, braille writer. Dresser first drawer, underwear. Second drawer, shirts and shorts. Third drawer, balled up socks. Mother's room, 3 strides to the right of mine. Her door always left the crack open. Bathroom located at the end of the second floor corridor. Toilet is the first thing to stumble upon when entering. Shower to the right. The heater always set to 2 out of 4. Your bottles on the bottom row of the bathroom shelf. The smell of strawberries to indicate shampoo. An antiseptic scent for conditioner. Bar of soap in its nook. Towel on the rack nearest to the shower, arm's length away when you turn to your left after a bath. At first, I thought certain colors were attached to certain objects, as if by their essence they imitated it. When this proved untrue, I figured some shapes must go hand in hand with some textures, or some colors with some smells. To understand my surroundings, I felt inclined to associate what I saw with what I felt, marry one sense with another, unify them all if I could. I needed to feel the sharp cut of the blade to know it was a knife, to understand that it was danger. Needed to feel the flow of warm blood to recognize that this red thing from my palm was my blood. I closed my eyes and recognized the world. I opened my eyes and everything was alien to me. Mother's voice did not match her face. My hands were not my own. I needed to shut my eyes to know that I was home, in my house, in my skin, in my mother's arms. In gaining a new sense, I regressed into childhood. I lost the words for toothbrush, for example, and table, and chair, doorknob. I relearned them only once I'd used them from their function, because that was how I became first acquainted with them. The next day I would forget again, be unable to match the word to the object. Every morning and every night, my mother would sit me down and hold up things into our house. In our house. Hairbrush, she would say, then comb my hair before she tucked me in. Lamp. Then she would turn the lamp on and off. She'd touch everything. Toilet, flush, soap, shampoo. Name them, show how they work. Onion, tomato, garlic. She let me smell them. Knife, dangerous. Before slicing the onions, tomatoes, and garlic to prepare our dinner. Spoon, fork. Then we would eat. Stove, oven, hot. Don't ever touch. I couldn't help it. I touched the oven one time when my mother was preheating it to make cookies, just to know what it felt like. 2nd-degree burns. It would be weeks before she let me in the kitchen again. My mother likes to cook. On her most sensible days, she is allowed to help the staff at the nursing home prepare meals. They tell me she moves about the kitchen with the self-possession they never see in her, not even on her best days. This doesn't surprise me. I had grown up to the smell of her concoctions, wafting up from the kitchen, and whether or not it's a myth that the other senses are drastically heightened in blindness, my senses were certainly sharpened from being her cooking assistant. She would make me taste her food and guess the components. I've learned to detect even the barest hint of cilantro or chevron, tarragon from a single whiff, differentiate between Savoy and red cabbage from texture alone. She may have joked once or twice. Maybe I was the only one who thought that was a joke, that we should have our own catering business, start a mother-daughter partnership. As I adjusted to my sight in life, I devoted more time to writing than to cooking. Graduating from the pointed simplicity of Braille, I had to learn the alphabet, how to read the lofty squiggles and hold the quivering pencil the proper way to draw the shape of a letter in between the 2 lines, the mountain of the capital A, the pregnant belly of the B, the simplicity of C, letters in between two blue lines, D, desk, E, earring, F, faucet, G, gate. When I mastered how to write in cursive, my mother finally allowed me to use the computer in her room. I type away at the keys while she stirred the stew in the kitchen. The walls of my childhood room are plastered with cream wallpaper dotted with flowers of deep purple and pastel pink. But I know underneath they're painted a gaudy orange, something my mother picked out back when it didn't matter. Some 6 months or so after my surgery, I asked her if we could paint over the walls with a softer color. Maybe mint green, maybe a little beige. Something more me. She had looked at me strangely then. I still don't have a name for it. And that inflection of her voice. As if you'd know what's you. My husband once told me that one of the things that piqued his interest was my habit of staring. He first noticed it when we were assigned to write a feature on Siargao. The way I took my time with everything, especially new sites, like I had to take each piece of what I saw, one at a time, and simply assemble the fragments in my brain, in my head. It's like photography, he told me. You frame a part and hope that it's enough to illuminate the rest of what you can see. There are still instances when someone's face is not a face but skin. Sometimes a detail becomes so sharp, the clarity of a whole becomes irrelevant. A chip on the porcelain bowl displayed in the living room cabinet, the scraggly strand of hair growing from the mole of Michael's knee, the foam of cappuccino, a bleach stain on my mother's dress, flakes of dandruff on an employee's button-down shirt. The detail stretches, expands until it fills the image. Until it fills the image. The world obliterated by the gradient of single petal. How easy then to lose one's ground. How easy to be absorbed, to indulge the self, be uprooted and carried away by the dazzle of minutiae, or of main transfix, while the world proceeds as it does, the movie playing continuously until the credits, while I just sit there, fascinated by the speck of dirt on the screen. It wasn't like the movies where the blind man who gains vision is all of a sudden delighted, rejoices in the miracle of sight, this wondrous gift. You had this stretching feeling, even after months of daydreaming and preparation, doctors explaining what it would be like, a voice in the dark reading a primer for those on the verge of seeing. The unveiled world still caught you off guard, made you panic and scramble off the chair. You shut your eyes and ran to somewhere you could feel safe. You had spent night after night listening to your mother's voice as she told you all of the wonderful things you were about to see. And still, you screamed and cried like a fetus ripped from a womb. You shut your eyes and allowed to be led into the cab that took you home. You ran to your room with your hands pressed against your face, knowing the number of steps, the turns to get there, and holed up under your bed. You closed your eyes and refused to open them again. For my birthday, Michael gave me an original GN. As per the artist's signature, the photograph was punched with scripts of braille, with the conceit that the seeing spectator and a visually impaired one will have to rely on each other to fully appreciate the artwork, pointing to the limits of perception and understanding. The photograph belongs to his nude series. The blindfolded woman's body is explored by the blind artist's hand. In the one that Michael gave me, two hands are intertwined. The legs of a woman blur into the background on a sheet of white. The angle of the shot and the shadows in the corners of the frame suggest that we're standing on the bed or futon. This is you and me, Michael had said, but we're better. In the decade that we've been together, my husband has grown accustomed to my habits as I have grown used to his. His shyness about his works in progress that he passes as artistic pride, the glacial pace with which he undresses, his almost compulsive tendency to leave the last bite of food on his plate or the last sip of a drink. In our first months, he had asked, gingerly, why I like to close my eyes when he walked. Didn't I want to see him up close? Half in jest, did I miss being blind? These insecurities have given away to the implicit trust we vest in our most cherished ones. I've never had to explain that I recognize the world best at arm's length, at once remote and intimate, held at a distance. He had simply understood. From the store, using your walking stick, feel your way down 6 steps. Turn right. Walking at an average pace, take 43 steps. If morning, the smell of gasoline and the sound of utensils heating plastic plates confirmation to turn right. If evening, the smell of coal and animal innards being grilled confirmation to turn right. Pause when the cheery voice says good morning or good evening or hi ate. That's the man who works at the carinderia and once helped you up when you tripped on a crack on the sidewalk. Turn and smile. Small to be polite. With will call for invitation. Walk 36 paces. Be careful of cracks. Pay attention to the smell of the garbage pile on the side of the road. Walk around it. Don't trip. Walk on the left side of parked cars lining the sidewalk. Don't mind stepping on the occasional roadkill, dog shit, or bubblegum. Take a right. 7 steps. Feel around the neighbor's potted plants. Stop at your door. From the school, ask the security guard by the gate to walk you to the usual jeepney stop. Ask the barker if the jeep will stop at your street. Sit nearest the driver, if possible. Track the turns. Right, left, right, right. The smell of gasoline, confirmation to go down. If unsure, ask the driver to stop at your street. Just to be safe, always ask the driver to stop at your street. Trust the cars won't run you over when you cross the road. Sometimes the dogs will bark, but don't run, or else they'll chase. Take a right, 7 steps. Feel around the neighbor's potted plants. Stop at your door. If lost, press the first button to speed dial your mother. Photographs demonstrate ways of seeing, and therefore also an impaired vision. You frame a part and the rest recedes into darkness. Always there is something that escapes the frame. The reverence with which Michael develops his films, my mother threading needles and stroking brushes to make art her blind daughter could not appreciate. The swell of feeling watching the waves climb onto the rocky shore. There is a picture of my mother that I uncovered last night while shuffling through old notebooks. In it, she rests her chin on her knuckles while she looks at something off frame. I don't know what, maybe a person, maybe an interesting show, or perhaps she had simply remembered something pleasant. She isn't smiling, not really. Perhaps the curl of a smile. Near, but not quite touching the lips just yet. Her face rests, serene. How could I have forgotten something so precious? All these years, tucked between 2 pages and boxed away, thrown into the dark of forgetting. I handed her the photo this morning during my visit. That's you, I said, as she stared at it, uncomprehending. I told her that I took it when we went to Boracay the first time. I've never been to Boracay, she said. I took it because I thought you looked pretty. Sitting in the shade alone, looking far off. I don't think you knew I was taking your picture. I like it because you could have been anyone on the beach, just another woman enjoying herself unattached. No daughter to worry about, no daughter to worry about, no grief to nurse. You could have been a tourist, could have been a local. You could have been a doctor from the city taking a break from the stress of the surgery room, or a resident who, living so near the sea, could not resist the pull of it on such a fine day. Or maybe a mermaid, washed up on shore, having traded her tail for legs. Any variety of permutations, a woman of all pasts and all futures, on the cusp of everything. She apologized and said she didn't have a daughter, that she and her husband have been trying but with no luck. But thank you for the picture, she said. I'll keep it. She took a book from her bedstand and, before slipping it between the pages, raised her eyes to see me watching her. There was, I believe, hope, the faintest recognition. She opened her mouth to speak, but just as quickly it was gone. Her forehead creased deeper, and I could tell she was about to cry at her sudden confusion. I asked if she'd like to eat with me, to which she said yes. Yes, she would. She had spent all morning cooking clean kitchen with the people in the kitchen. She hoped I would like it.